Hey everyone, Diggs here, coming at you with another video on fantasy world building. So in the last video, what we covered mostly is why it's so important to build a map whenever you're starting your new story, right? So today we're going to get into a little bit more detail. We're going to go over why city placement is one of the most important aspects of fantasy world building that is constantly overlooked. So why is city placement so important? Well, it's because if you place a city in the right area, what's going to happen is it's going to start creating its own story. And if you have unique cities with unique stories, you're going to pique interest. So how do you choose a good place for a city? Well, you're going to need three things. The first thing is going to be water. The second thing is going to be resources. And the third thing is going to be defense. All right, so let's go ahead and put down a city. This spot over here looks like a good spot. And here's why. You got water, you got the defense of the valley, and you got the resources from the mountains and the lake. So how does that dot tell a story? Well, you got to ask yourself two questions. What kind of resources are around, and what kind of access to trade does this city have? Those are what I like to call cultural indicators. There's a few others, but we'll get into that in another video. For now, it's just important to know those two things. Using cultural indicators is a way to create a unique culture for that city. And that's really important because culture is a plot driver. So what kind of trade would this place have? Probably not much. It's landlocked, first of all. It doesn't have any major river system that's going through it. The closest one is pretty far away, relatively speaking. And it's in a valley that's surrounded by mountains. So outside trade is probably negligible. Trade is important because it shows how much outside contact a culture has. If there's not a lot of trade going through a city, then chances are they don't have a lot of contact with the outside world. So what kind of resources does this city have? Well, I'm looking at a lot of mountains, and I'm looking at a lake and some trees. So I'm thinking fish. I'm thinking timber, and then some sort of mineral resource. So I'm going to say iron. One of the things that I don't want to say is that they have high access to other types of food besides those fish. And the reason why I say this is because if there's not a lot of food in a culture, it tends to bring them towards violence, right? You ever been hungry and angry for no apparent reason? Well, it's because you're hungry. Now imagine that on a city scale or on a cultural scale. Throw in access to iron weapons and put a little dash of isolated xenophobia in it, and you got your recipe for disaster and a good plot line. See, it's all coming together now, right? Your resources are affecting your culture, and now your culture is going to affect your plot. Boom. So now let's throw a character into this whole mix, right? So let's say we have an adventurer that comes into town from the south. And he stops by town not knowing anything of what to expect at all. And he is completely culturally different from these people. Now, if you're playing a D&D campaign, this is going to be perfect for you because you're going to know exactly what kind of NPCs they're going to be running into. Are they going to be running into a couple of nice guys? Yeah, probably not. But if they did run into a nice guy, that guy's going to really stick out because he's a nice guy in a culture that probably isn't too inviting, right? And maybe that guy's just pretending to be nice, right? You see how this is starting to work? You know, you just get that creative juice flowing, and all of a sudden you got yourself a really good story, and it's all just because you put a dot on a map. Well, and you put some thought into it too. That's always really important. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the video. If you found it helpful, maybe think about liking and subscribing. Just throwing it out there. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.